Hello and welcome to Very Interesting. I'm your host, Phillip Britt. On today's episode, we're exploring the world of bees, their benefits and challenges with entomologist and beekeeper Cory Stevens. Cory, welcome to Very Interesting.
Thank you. Very, very glad to be here.
Oh, thrilled to have you today. First of all, before we get into the bees, because that's going to be the crux of what we talk about, tell me a little bit about you. How'd you get to this point? Who are you and how'd you get here?
Sure. I'm a Dexter native, so born and raised around here. Both my parents were from this area, so I lived around St. Louis for a bit and came back. I worked in transportation and logistics, educational background, agribusiness. So, we're from a farming community.
Sure.
I was very interested in that, helping Uncle Kenny farm, and the business aspect of it. So later became an entomologist. Mom said I should be an entomologist since I was about this big.
Fan of bugs, I suppose.
Big fan of bugs, absolutely. Yeah, instead of playing Nintendo so much, I was turning over rocks and looking at stuff in nature, catching stuff in the creek and all that. I love to be outdoors.
Very cool, very cool. So where'd you go to school?
I went to Dexter High School.
Yep.
Then SEMO, where I got my agribusiness management, and the master's in entomology was from University of Nebraska-Lincoln.
Okay, excellent. So what was it, so obviously you loved bugs, but what got you kind of focused on the bees?
Well, my dad and my brother had bought a bunch of beehives.
Okay.
And so they had them placed around the farm, and I opened one up and I was hopelessly addicted to it.
What got them into the bees?
I think they thought it was a good money-making idea, you know.
Yeah, a lot of folks do that.
A lot of folks do that. You get free honey, it's free.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, there's a lot of work involved. Right. It's kind of hot, you get stung.
Oh.
So I think they kind of lost interest in it a bit, but it had the opposite effect on me. Like you have frames in a beehive, and just looking through it, everything was changing. It was tied to the environment and plants, and it was like pages of a book that you could look through. It was just, loved it, still do.
Oh, absolutely, I can tell. How many bees do you have currently?
Bees, millions. Colonies, around 250.
Okay.
Yeah, we keep growing. I started doing this full time as a bee breeder and queen producer March 1st of last year. Okay. Left Nestle Purina, that was my day job as a senior transportation rep for them for 15 years. So it was kind of cool to be able to go do what I want.
Sure.
And just focus on that.
So do you raise bees for honey and for other products at this point too?
Yes. My main focus is breeding honeybees for certain traits, but we produce a lot of queens. We ship thousands of queens all over the lower 48 states.
But you still got a lot of honey out there too,
Got a lot of honey, yep. And all the people that are buying our bees, that's their primary focus, pollination and honey.
Sure. So my understanding is that most of the honeybees in America are European honeybees.
Correct, yes.
How'd they get here in the first place? They weren't native, so how'd they get here?
Not native. They found some, I believe, some in the fossil record. I don't know that it was specifically Apis mellifera that came out of, like Apis mellifera ligustica that came out of the Italian region, but we did evidently have honeybees here at some point. But the ones that we're familiar with currently are European honeybees, and I believe when the Mayflower came over, the first arrival of Europeans, I believe they had bees with them.
So what do you think, why do you think they brought bees? Why did they see them as important?
Sugar, something sweet, honey, and I think even more importantly, the wax products from candles. We didn't have electricity, so if they had candles, and there's a million different uses for beeswax.
And that's what the hive essentially is.
Yep, that's what they build the comb out of.
Right.
Yep, it's pretty neat. They eat a whole bunch of nectar, and if you catch a bee, there's little segments on her abdomen. You'll see just sheets of wax coming out.
Okay.
And they take that and shape miraculous things. The comb
pretty amazing, isn't it?
Hold hundreds of pounds of honey,
just
made out of wax. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So there are lots of other types of bees,
absolutely,
in America. But tell us what you've seen as far as just around here. How many different kinds of bees have you seen?
It's kind of mind blowing. It's almost like a frontier that hasn't been properly explored. If you find certain types of longhorn bees, you'll ask entomologists even, and they'll give you maybe the family, or like it's Melissades, it's a longhorn bee, but they won't name the specific individual because we keep finding stuff. There's so much diversity out there, it's pretty neat. And just around here, I don't know exactly what number we would have, but I mean, there's sweat bees, longhorn bees, bumblebees, honeybees, leafcutter bees. It's pretty cool.
There are lots of bees for sure.
Yeah, they keep everything pollinated.
If you have flowers in your yard, there are lots of different kinds of bees. And you were telling me earlier that you planted wildflowers just to and then you go out and look like the little boy who loved the insects. You're out there looking at the bees. And you told me you had seen probably maybe over 100 different types of bees.
And I'd helped Missouri Bumblebee Atlas collect some samples of bumblebees. I thought I knew something about bumblebees, but I didn't. There's a lot, just bumblebees alone. There's a lot of different species out there, even just in this area.
That's amazing.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So honeybees are extremely important to agriculture.
Definitely.
Here in southeast Missouri, but all around the world for that matter. In fact, we see boxes, bee hives in fields, out in the fields, all over the region. So what makes bees so beneficial to a successful agricultural crop?
Sure. Well, most of the plants that we like to eat fruit or seed crops off of, a lot of it requires insect pollination. So we've worked on producing some varieties that can self-pollinate.
Right.
Some of them are good as a whole. They perform better with insect pollination, which is, I think, how they were designed. So it's not really surprising. But your fruit quality is better, your yield is better, and this covers from soybeans to cotton to melons, which I love. Matter of fact, I saw a stand on the way down.
All the watermelons are coming off right now.
I may have to visit on the way back. It's July. So.
That's right.
So a lot of this stuff that we really like to eat and consume, and stuff we don't even think about, that cattle consume, whether it's clover, legumes and hay, alfalfa, all that stuff requires insect pollination. And a lot of the stuff we never think about that holds the ecosystem together requires insect pollination. So it's all tied together.
I mean, we've got peach orchards not far from here, and
Absolutely.
There's no way that's exactly how those get pollinated.
Sir.
So tell us how that works. How does pollination work? Because I know we talked about, the bees use the pollen for their own benefit.
They do.
But then also they transfer it from one bloom to another. So tell us a little bit about how that works.
Yes, they're kind of going at it from a self-interested perspective, but it's mutually beneficial. So they're looking for nectar, which is a sugary secretion from plants that they make honey out of, and pollen. So pollen's their protein source. They got to raise babies, they got to feed their babies, they need protein. So they'll go around pollinating, gathering resources for the colony, and transferring all this pollen around. They're just pollen magnets. I believe they're negatively charged where pollen grains stick to them, so whenever they visit flowers everywhere, everything they touch is getting pollinated and will produce like it's supposed to, seed or fruit.
So they take some of the pollen back with them, but more of what they do is drop it off at the next one, pick up some more, drop it off at the next flower. So.
Yep, and honeybees are exceptional pollinators. Our native pollinators are really important too, but like we talked about earlier, some of them are solitary, so they'll raise some young, but there's just one bee going around. Well, if you've got a honeybee colony, there could be 40 to 60 individuals in there, and a big portion of them are out looking for resources and pollinating. So almond orchards, crops around here like we were talking about, people will place honeybees in there because we can manage them, make sure they're healthy, and if there's not enough native population there to sustain pollination, we can bring them in. We talked about almond production. I believe their insurance mandates to have so many hives per acre. They know how important pollination is.
So let's say you look at one of those boxes that sets in the field. How many bees are usually in one of those boxes?
If it's a big production colony, it could be upwards of 60,000 bees. There'll be one queen in there typically. Occasionally there's two if they're trying to replace one, but 40 to 60,000 bees is not uncommon.
Wow. So they're going out, they're not just in that field that's right there. They're in the next field.
They'll travel a couple miles.
Well, I mean, I saw the bee movie. They go out and back, out and back all day. I know all about that. So So we see how it's beneficial and how they benefit us as as people who like to eat and like to wear clothes.
I like to eat, absolutely.
Absolutely. But what are the greatest challenges to the bee population today?
Probably varroa mites and diseases. So we imported a mite in the late 80s. It's similar to a tick. So you think about, if you get a tick on you or your dog gets a tick on you, it's the same family, same type of organism, but it's a parasite. And so it'll feed on them. And the bees our European honeybees hadn't been exposed to that mite ever until like the late 1950s. So it's not like they've had a lot of time to respond. And in the US, the late 80s were the first ones that we'd seen. Decimated a lot of the bee population. And I don't know if you've heard some news clips recently of record honeybee losses. People were asking me, which I wasn't collecting the samples, but I said, I think it's the usual suspects. It's mites and viruses. And that's what
And do the mites carry the viruses?
They do, yes. So whenever the honeybee pupates in the comb, so it's developing from a larvae into a pupa, and then they hatch as an adult bee. They're feeding on them while they're developing as a bee, which is not good.
Right.
And they feed on the fat bodies of the bee, which is kind of acts as their liver too, so it affects their immune system as a whole. Not good.
Right.
And a lot of the bees have no idea what to do with these mites, although there are some, we talked about that briefly, that we breed for that have genetic traits.
So how do you think, and you may have, the research I'm sure has been done, but how did the mites get here? How'd that happen?
That's a good question. A lot of times you'll have you seen a swarm before or seen a picture of one like hanging on something? A lot of people suspect that there was a swarm like on a container ship or something that probably came from overseas. And varroa can handle inbreeding, so even if you just have a few that showed up on a bee, they can establish a whole population off of it. They found it in Florida first.
Okay.
But we talked about
Doesn't it always happen in Florida first?
Always, exactly. But people will move bees around to pollinate in different parts of the world, so they'll winter in Florida because they can get an early start.
Sure.
Nectar and pollen's coming in early, and then whenever they move bees out by the truckload, they get spread around.
They come everywhere, right. So what's being done to combat the varroa mites?
There's some. We talked briefly about that miticide that the industry has relied on for a while. It's starting to fail. It's just like if you use something in crops over and over and over and over again, eventually the insects will find a way around it. Well, they did with amitraz.
Well, everything mutates, just like
Everything
antibiotics
mutates.
that we use. We give too many antibiotics, then
They get resistant.
Yeah,
We have to find new ones. So we're finding new miticides that work effectively. There's some really good ones out that are like organic acids, to where it doesn't stick in the comb or cause as many issues. But as with a lot of this stuff, selective breeding is the best long-term approach for IPM.
And that's the approach you've taken.
That's the approach I took, yes.
So tell us a little bit about that. I mean, about how you got into that, and then we can kind of expand on what you're doing with that now.
Sure. I told you whenever I first started going to bee meetings, like where people go and nerd out and talk about their beehives, whenever I first started going there, it felt like a Varroa anonymous meeting.
Because everybody was dealing with it and didn't know how,
Everybody's
right?
dealing. It's almost like you're more concerned. It takes the fun out of it because you're more worried about keeping them alive than just enjoying them and watching them do what they do. And so I was just hyper focused on it. I think, what can I do that might make this situation better? And I'd read a lot. Some of Dr. Harbaugh from the USDA bee lab and some of his cohorts had found specific traits that they could measure and show that the bees already had, it's not gene editing or anything, that gave them a massive advantage with mites and viruses. So the easy version of how it works, I mentioned they'll get on the brood whenever they're trying to develop, and they're capped at that point. So if you look at you can't see them, the bees could smell that there is a reproducing varroa in there, or that the pupa is sick, and they open it up and they throw it outside. So naturally, without a chemical intervention, the bees were dealing with that situation themselves, but it was a genetic trait, and only a small percentage of the population had it. As a whole, a lot of our bees are naive to varroa. They have no idea what to do with them until they just get overrun and the colonies collapse.
Sure. That's pretty amazing that they
amazing.
That they could identify and naturally know what to do to destroy that.
Yes, there's a lot of skeptics in the bee community. They said it's like breeding sheep that are resistant to wolves. I thought maybe they have a point, but I'd already seen evidence to the contrary, and nature finds a way.
Sure.
Just like they find a way around antibiotic overuse, like we talked about, or certain overuse or reliance on a certain pesticide, they found out a way to get around this host and manage it too.
Well, in the evolutionary process, those colonies that have bees that can detect and rid themselves of the mites are going to survive.
Absolutely.
Those that don't can't. But what it sounds like you're doing is kind of giving that a head start.
Yes.
You're kind of saying, okay, let's breed that particular trait into the queen, and then everybody else has it.
Yep, and Dr. Harbaugh showed me how to measure it. I was in his breeding group whenever he started it, so it's not that hard. You don't have to have a PhD or a lab coat to do it, which was nice, or expensive lab equipment. So we started selecting this, but I would say basically what we did is we put Mother Nature kind of back in her place to let us know like what's sustainable, what's going to be able to handle it, because pollination and honey production is rigorous. There's a lot to it. Just like any agricultural venture, we need something that's rugged. And so I feel like I put Mother Nature kind of in the driver's seat, and then we'll add our selection. We want it to be productive, we want it to be workable, we want it to make honey, and then we want it to be disease resistant. And then I couple technology with that too to concentrate it. I
mean, yes, sure, because beekeepers they're thrilled that the crop grows, but that may not be their end result. They want honey,
absolutely,
or the wax, or those are the things that they're going to be able to sell to the public.
Correct.
Those are the things that
keep the lights on.
Exactly. They're all that's beneficial to somebody else, and maybe some of them are farmers and it's their farm.
Or, a lot of them do both.
Sure.
I've got some friends that row crop and have honeybees.
Sure, but you want to make sure that when you're breeding there's still going to be the honey production, there's still going to be the pollen, all that stuff's still going to be part of the.
And it needs to be alive. Dead bees don't really produce much.
Right.
I haven't found a market for it.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. So your breeding techniques, I don't know if there are a lot of people doing that. I know you've kind of been able to really get into it full time. So tell me, is that in high demand around the world, and how's that work right now?
It is in high demand, especially if you're producing something that's mite resistant. We talked about Australia just got them, which is just devastating, really, for that industry. It is in really high demand, but not everyone knows what to do, and some of them are skeptical about it. Sometimes you'll have people selling snake oil and such, because they don't know any better, some of them.
Right.
But if you're able to concentrate it and you're able to have this stable population, it's definitely in high demand. That's what got me out of my day job.
Sure.
We talked about a lot of beekeepers that want mated queens, which there's a massive amount of labor and overhead in it. I kind of met them in the middle, where they were supporting my breeding work and the focus that we had taken. They really liked that and were willing to kind of meet me in the middle and buy virgin queens. Okay. Queens that have not yet mated.
Well, and you can do that quicker. You don't have to.
Absolutely. So with a smaller apiary, I have 250 colonies. I have friends that run 3,000 colonies. Okay. I can do a lot with a little. And we ship thousands of queens a year. Okay. Whereas if I did open mated queens, I would only be able to produce a fraction of that.
Okay. All right. And so what else are you doing with that? I know that since I happened to look online and I saw that you're actually doing a presentation on breeding for the Missouri Beekeepers Association coming up soon. So what other things are you able to do?
Sure, that's opened up a lot of opportunities to speak. I've got a lot of friends that have YouTube and do interviews. So, I've talked to beekeepers, and I think that helped get word out really well. I've traveled all over the place, a little bit internationally. I spoke at Manitoba Beekeepers Association in Canada last year. I'll be in Copenhagen later this year. I've been in Nebraska already. Wisconsin's coming up. Event I've got up there. Michigan, I just got done with a breeding group where I did consultation. I'll do consultation work for some universities too that are trying to teach advanced breeding techniques so other people can do this. It's not going to be won by just one person doing it. Okay. The industry as a whole needs to adopt it. And back to you were asking about interest, there's a resurgence of interest in it. because one of our most popular miticides is starting to fail. The mites have found out a way around it, and people are kind of panicked.
Sure.
And then if you've seen the news clips about record losses, people are looking for more sustainable solutions, and I'm glad to be a part of that.
So that kind of brings me to what do you see as the future for bees and consequently for us
Sure.
as human beings and our food supply?
Yep, I think have a pretty positive outlook, but I also am experiencing firsthand a sustainable solution. So, and other people are seeing this as well, and I'll invite doubting Thomases to come test too. Some people that are skeptical, which good reason, I'm skeptical too until I see something. I'm
Sure.
from the show me state.
That's
I
right.
like to see it. So I see a big adoption by the industry. More people are demanding it, more people are trying to produce it. I've been instructing some people on how to do so with advanced breeding techniques and workshops. I'll be in New York State later, I think it's in September, teaching people how to do this. So I think it'll take a small army of queen breeders and queen producers, but it's manageable, we can do it. And in consequence, if you have more, obviously healthier bees and more bees, our pollination and our food systems are more secure then. It's important.
Do miticides affect the production of honey and
Some can.
Okay.
Some of the older stuff that we use, whenever we first got Varroa, people were panicked. So it's same with any pesticide, you have to go through an EPA approval. I think some were approved, as emergency use because everyone was worried, with good reason, that our pollinators were just going to collapse. And so some of the stuff we used originally was fat soluble, and wax is a lipid, and so it would stick in your comb, and it would start, after you used it a long time, it would build up in your brood combs. You couldn't use it with honey supers on, so your honey and wax, that should be separate. But with strict, here's when you can use it, here's how to use it, but it affected the bees' reproduction. That's where I said, we'd move to amitraz where it doesn't stick in the comb, very low residue, if any, and we also have our organic acids. Well, the amitraz that worked so well for many years, that's Frank Rinkovich out of the USDA Bee Lab had some studies come out to show we know this gene allows these mites to get around amitraz, and they're finding it's more widespread than we thought. So, yeah, not relying on that so much, focusing on organic acids or finding new miticides that we can use. And again, the only long-term sustainable is breeding for resistant
and the reason
traits.
I ask that is, there's such a push from a lot of people for organic farming, for organic vegetables, and I was just curious as to, whether you could market organic honey that's not been sprayed, and I just didn't know how that affects it.
Bees will forage for a couple miles, and so from my understanding, you could say, well, these are untreated bees because we don't treat our bees to see how they can actually handle Varroa, but as a whole, people treat their bees, again, most with organic acids where there's no residue or anything.
So one of the things that, honey production, and let's talk a little bit about honey production. One of the things about honey production, people want clover honey, or they want certain kinds of honey. So if bees are going, 2 or 3 miles away, how do we say this is clover honey?
Yeah, well, it depends on the skill of the beekeeper, a lot of it, but it'll have a unique color, a unique scent, and a unique taste. So occasionally it'll be mixed. A lot of people will just sell it as wildflower honey if they don't know what variety it is, but there's some really sought after stuff like sourwood out in the mountains out east. It's a tree that blooms, and it's so good, and it fetches a higher price. They can tell, and they've also got DNA testing now to where you can send a honey sample off and they'll tell you everything that's in it. Before that, some people would guess, but other people knew what was blooming, when they were putting it up, and what it tasted like. Most of mine around here, I call it wildflower because it's mixed. Like one frame even might taste different than the next frame.
Okay.
But it's our late season honey is pretty consistent. I would speculate it would possibly be soybeans maybe.
Okay.
And it's pretty good honey. We get good honey around here. I like it.
Good, good. So one other area that's kind of I don't know, some people get, maybe they're scared of bees or they're, have concerns about it. But you see videos of, I guess they're Africanized honeybees, and they'll swarm and they'll attack people, they'll attack livestock, they'll attack animals, like your dog or cat.
Right.
But is that very common, and is it common anywhere near us?
It's common in the south. Technically, we're in a blue zone, which is an Africanized honeybee free area.
Okay.
There have been, I don't know exactly what year it was, but they found a hybrid in South Arkansas.
Okay.
So it's possible, but a lot of times they're mixing with our European honeybees as well, to where their temperament's a lot better.
Okay.
But it can be a concern, especially in the Southwest, parts of Florida, Texas,
Yeah.
Down towards Mexico, Arizona, and Southern California.
A lot of the videos that I've seen, I used to watch videos, YouTube, of this beekeeper who actually, their job was to go out and collect those emergency situations where the bees were very dangerous, and they would go out and collect those. And speaking of that, people will sometimes have a hive or a colony that infests their home, and at that point, it's an invasive
It's a problem.
creature in there, in the walls of their house, and
Yes.
all is there's buzzing in your wall, and you're seeing a lot of bees around. What can someone do if that happens?
Usually a beekeeper has to remove them. Some people will have them exterminated, which occasionally is necessary. The only downside is if they've been there a bit. I mean, there could be 50 pounds of honey in there. So if you do get the bees killed, it can mold and just cause a mess.
Sure.
Usually a beekeeper has to remove them. I've got some friends that I dial if I'm not able to deal with it, because usually those happen during queen season when I'm working about 7 days a week. And
Right.
so I've got some retired buddies that help out when needed.
Okay. Yeah, because you got to remove the comb and everything out of the walls. I mean, I've seen videos of that where they tear the walls out to get it all out. But
Yep. And then seal it up so they don't go back. Because if you
Right.
take the comb out, they put propolis. It's like plant resins. They'll spread it around their colony. And so even if you take all that out, if you don't seal it up, sometimes
They'll find
next
their
year
way
they're like,
back.
oh, this seems great.
Yeah,
They'll
they'll
move
find their
back in.
this was a great place before. Let's
Exactly.
Somebody's been here. Let's move in.
They do it.
Yeah, I understand. So this all sounds, again, we talk about how beneficial bees are, and then we talk about all these challenges, and the fear is obviously that we're going to lose our pollinators, and so what can I do, or what can somebody who's watching, what can we do? We're not raising bees. We're not. I'm not going to be, creating mite-resistant queens, and what can I do to assist what you're doing to ensure a healthy population in the future?
Best thing you can do is plant flowers or trees or shrubs that produce pollen or nectar. Some of them are really pretty, so it's really nice, that people appreciate them and the pollinators appreciate them. That's where they get their food, so you're feeding them. Nutrition's a big deal. Some of the studies where they were showing a big collapse of bees, the mites were there, but it was nutritional as well. So they're not eating quite as well. If you're a farmer, if you've got, we like to clear certain areas out. If it's really unproductive or just not good ground, just, people will plant equip plots you can get through the USDA where it's pollinator protection. You just plant flowers out there if you're not making money off of it anyway. Fence rows, a lot of my buddies like to clean up a good fence row.
Yeah.
If it's in a highly erodible area, leave them. If you don't mind, there's a lot of nectar and pollen producing stuff you don't even think about, just maple trees, elders, all this stuff nobody really pays attention to but is really good. So habitat, feeding them. If you're spraying, I have to spray my orchard or I don't get fruit. So really avoid while it's blooming. Okay. After that, as long as you're not spraying it straight in the hive, you can really use them safely. And I don't feel like, with agriculture, I don't know that we're to a point where we can just abandon that stuff.
Right.
That would affect our food system. So just being cautious about when you're spraying.
So spraying basically before bloom and after bloom, that's the best way to do it.
That's the best. Yep, absolutely. And then, because if they're not picking it up and taking it back, then even if it's in close proximity most of the time, because I have a lot of bees in agricultural areas and I rarely have an issue with spraying.
Okay. So get out there, plant. I mean,
Flowers.
And planting flowers is great because
Exactly.
what makes you smile more or happier than seeing beautiful flowers. So.
Yeah, I planted a bunch on my farm, about 14 acres, and we had a friend stop by and looked at the field, which is pretty spectacular right now, and was like, "Did you plant that?"
Yeah, I meant to do that.
Exactly. They're like, "Well, it looked pretty
awesome.
Impressive to just have happened by itself."
Right. No, I just let it go and it just happened. But no, that's awesome. That's very cool. All right. Well, thank you so much. I know you have a YouTube channel.
I do. Yep.
And so tell us about that. Tell us what you do on that. And
Sure. It's Stevens Bee Company, my last name. I talk to bee experts. We have conversations. I post different tips and for beekeepers, people that are interested in bees. I do some generalized stuff, like tours of my wildflowers and stuff like that. So, yep, my website, most people probably don't want to buy queens, but if you do happen to get into beekeeping and get addicted to it, I have really good queens, and my web address is just stevensbeeco.com.
Okay. So if you're out there and you happen to be one of those little kids that loved picking up insects and playing with them when you were little and you want to get into bees, this is the man to talk to. So thank you, Cory Stevens, for joining us. I know so much more about bees now than I did having watched the Bee Movie. So I'm proud to have had the opportunity to share with you, and we'll see you next time.